Welcome to the Podium Pod, the Pick and Rolls National Basketball Podcast, as we are now at Paris 2024. I'm Adam Webster, and I'm joined today for the very first time on any of our pick and roll platforms by NCAA champion, I have to say that first, NBA scout, analyst, author and contributor at Low Man Help, Marc Campbell. Marc, it's been a really exciting few weeks. We've been talking about doing this podcast for, I guess, the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks. We've been running through tape and we've been running through plays and we've been looking at the makeup of this roster. There's so much excitement around this Boomers campaign, and it's augmented by the fact that we've been talking about doing this for quite some time. So we get to delve into the minutiae of what this Boomers team is and why they're important.
Yeah, we're in the weeds. We're excited.
Well, welcome to the show. For people who don't know your background, your career, for Australian basketball fans that are maybe seeing your face for the first time, give us a little bit of an elevator pitch on the Marc Campbell story, where you've come from, where you are now, why you fell in love with the game. That's a question I always like to ask, and why we're talking right now.
Yeah. Okay, quick elevator, Marc Campbell. I am from North Carolina, signed a scholarship in UNC Greensboro, transferred, walked on at Carolina for a little bit, scholarship at Carolina for a little bit, 2009 NCAA champion, played overseas, Italy, Germany, Estonia, left basketball, got back into coaching as a shooting coach for NBA players. And last year just started writing a Substack. I wanted it to be basically my passion project about all the nerdy things that I would send clients or be digging into or talk to friends in the NBA about. And I just decided, like, okay, I'm going to put it public. And people enjoyed it a little bit. And Ken from the Pick and Roll enjoyed it enough that he reached out and he said, you know, if you ever wanted to be a part of anything in Australian basketball or write a piece or anything, let me know. And the Boomers have been a team that I've always loved watching in international play, and a lot of their guys play over here in the States. So it's just been really cool. For the past 2 weeks, we've been watching Boomers games, and I've been sending over edits and clips, and we've been enjoying the hell out of the team. They've been so fun to watch.
We've been getting our nerd on for a few weeks now.
Yeah.
We first connected just after the squad was announced, which was a really controversial time in Australian basketball because there are a few decisions made, and we'll get into all of this across this episode. This is a long one, guys. Strap yourselves in. We cover a lot of ground here. We've got a lot of topics to go through, but it's going to be a lot of fun. But we talked about the roster makeup. We talked about why the decisions were made, why Brian Goorjian and the coaching staff made the call to leave Matisse Thybulle out of this team. 2021 bronze medalist, of course, all defensive player in the NBA. He's a guy that you would consider from the outside looking in, and certainly from casual Australian basketball fans, as a guy that should be selected in this squad. But he wasn't. We talked a lot about that offline over the last few weeks, and what we've seen from the Boomers across warm-up games, the way that they've chosen to play, it's all kind of coming into focus as to why personnel decisions were made.
Yeah, I think so. I remember when I first talked to you guys, I was shocked at the blowback and the pushback that the no Thybulle decision was getting. I didn't know that he was so endeared to the basketball community, especially you guys, in terms of his involvement with Boomers and even over guys that, you know, grew up playing in Australia. He was being prioritized almost over them from the perspective of the pick and roll guys when we talked. That was kind of shocking to me. I think one thing that I've seen, and from the start when we talked about it, I love the team that Goorjian selected. I think he's done such a phenomenal job, and I think that they are really, really locked in on what they're doing. They have a plan. Everybody knows their role. And I think that's something that really separates the good, great, and then elite teams. You know, how you move within this role definition, acceptance, and enthusiasm. There's really 3 levels to it. And to me, when I watch the Boomers from China till now and team selection, what they're doing, it's really clear that this team is all in on Gorge's vision. They're know exactly what each one of them is supposed to do, and they care about the team more than themselves. And that's shining through in the way they're playing.
I want to pick up on something you said there, the three steps, the role, definition, the acceptance, the enthusiasm. Let's hit definition first. What do you see as, let's talk Josh Giddey. He's, a linchpin of this team. He had the ball in his hands more than just about anyone else in Okinawa last year in the World Cup. How do you see the definition of Josh Giddey's role that's perhaps different to World Cup past in terms of how he has to play to maximize this team's chances to win?
Yeah, I think it really starts and ends with him offensively. They're leaning into, you're our engine, you're going to drive this forward. I think when you see him play right now, there's an empowerment that's kind of, building inside of him. Every single time he takes the court, you're starting to see him shoot more. You're starting to see him not live and die so much of whether the ball goes in or not to the next play. He's starting to really understand, like, it's going to start and end with me. I can't shy away from things. I can't shy away from attacking. I can't shy away from shooting. Like, I'm going to drive this forward. And I think, to me, watching him, I've watched him for a few years now. To me, that's one of the most refreshing things to see, is he has taken the mantra and the mindset that it's okay if I miss. It's okay if it's a turnover. That's not going to deter me from doing everything right. I know the next play and the next play and the next play. That to me is growth. That to me is something that's going to be very important for them as they keep driving forward when they get into games where it actually matters if they win or lose. Does he keep that same mindset? That will be a key for me with Giddey.
Let's talk about shooting. You're a shooting coach, and role definition, and then moving into that acceptance. You and I have talked a lot over the last few weeks about the difference between the China games and then the remaining warm-up games in Abu Dhabi and then in France. The difference in hesitation prior to the shot was something that you and I covered a lot and talked a lot about and dissected a lot. I think it struck me how strong you were about when someone hesitates, how bad that is for your offense, how bad that is for your ability to be able to be positive. And we look at, I don't mean to single out Matisse, because he wasn't just the only guy doing this against China in Melbourne. Dyson Daniels was doing it. Josh Giddey was doing it. There was a hesitation when they had a wide open shot. Now, the difference is, we've seen in later warm-up games, there is no hesitation, and it's almost the exception rather than the rule now. When you see a hesitation, Jack McVeigh had one that we talked about in that last warm-up game, and we both sort of went, that's not what we want. We need no hesitation. We need everyone to take the shot that they're given immediately.
Yeah, I think we talked about it plenty, and it's something that I talk about with clients all the time. I always say that makes and misses happen before you shoot the ball, right? They happen with your shot prep footwork. They happen with, mentally doing everything right, and then when you actually shoot it, you really have no control. If you've done the work early, you've done everything you possibly can, and you've earned the right to just let it rip. And so a lot of that happens, behind the scenes of the reps and the confidence. But when you get in the game, you have to do that, because when you don't do that, when you turn down shots that are in rhythm and on balance, it puts the offense behind schedule. It allows the defense to help more aggressively off a certain player or the team as a whole. It doesn't make them pay for aggressive mistakes. You can't allow people to be aggressive on the ball, give up in rhythm and on balance shots, and then not actually take them. That's not smart basketball. And I think as a team, we've seen them really start to lean more and more into, we're going to do everything right we know in terms of reading help, creating good passing lanes, driving the basketball. And when we get shots that are in rhythm and on balance, we got to let them rip, because make or miss, all we can do is play with great process. We're not going to live and die by whether it goes in or not. I think that's been awesome to see. And when we watch the China games, one thing that did stand out was Matisse's unwillingness to take shots that were in rhythm and on balance, whether the first one went in or not. He let the results kind of determine his process. And when you're out there and you start letting your emotions go up and down based on the results, if it goes in or not, that's never a good recipe for high level basketball.
Is that something that's trained at the NBA level because of the distinct roles that you have in the NBA. I mean, I imagine that it's difficult for someone that's known as a non-shooter to take wide open shots in the NBA at sometimes, and they'd almost be discouraged from that by some coaches. Is it something that complete mindset shift has to occur between league basketball and FIBA basketball because there's so little margin for error?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it doesn't matter any type of basketball, college, NBA, FIBA, anything. Like you
Shoot
have
it.
to be, yeah, you got to, if you're in rhythm and on balance, you shouldn't be hunting bad shots, but you should be hunting great shots that are in rhythm and on balance. And when you get those, they're like gold. I mean, those are practice shots. It's really difficult to get open shots in any basketball game. And people hunt as teams catch and shoot threes. And when you don't take them and you put the offense behind schedule, it doesn't matter the level of basketball. It just isn't a good recipe. It's not something you want to really like get a steady diet of. And this team does such a great job of creating those shots. They have playmaking all over the court. They have shooting at the big guy level. They have playmaking at the big guy level. They do a wonderful job of playing together. They do a wonderful job of attacking open space, whether it's by the dribble or by the pass. And so they're generating really good shots consistently. You can't not take them though. You can make or miss. It's
Yeah.
hard to get them. You got to take them, and they do a great job of now like creating them and taking them.
Now, you're going to join us after every one of the group games at the very least throughout this tournament. And something we're going to be talking about all tournament long is, did we have any hesitation from any of the guys out there? Did anyone get a little bit tight, get a little bit worried, get a little bit stressed, and not have the instinct of throw it up? Because I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation between us all tournament long of, we had a couple that game. There are a couple of instances of that. We're going to have to call that out because it's something that we're going to be really aware of.
Yeah, it will matter. It will matter. I've seen lately Josh Green has started to throttle back a little bit. He's been starting
Yep.
to drive some that he should shoot in rhythm and on balance. And I think you're going to see it in pick and roll coverages. Giddey, versus the United States turned down a few when guys went under. And versus Serbia, even though he's not shooting threes versus unders on the pick and roll, he still shot a few. He walked Jokic down once or twice. He walked a few guys down and shot them. And I think as the shell compresses and as people go under, it's going to be important to shoot those. And then even more important, how the team makeup is, they've kind of planned ahead for these type of situations by putting in guys like Nick Kay and Reith that can and Jack some that can pick and pop, that can shoot the ball, that can have a counter when teams try to compress their shell and prevent the guards from getting in the paint, where they can kind of invert the offense and have big shooting the ball. And against France, we saw that. I mean, the second half, Reith was massive, and his pop action, his shooting the ball versus drop coverages versus Rudy playing deep in the lane versus them trying to clog the paint, compress the shell, that cracked things open. And I think they have a nice makeup of the roster where they can invert that offense, but it will be important that the guards keep shooting those.
I want to pick up on that just as a sidebar because it's something that we've talked about more recently around the Duop Reith piece, because Jock Landale didn't play barely at all or at all in that second half of that last game against France. And we saw why. And it was Brian Goorjian making an active decision to try a different look. And it's not that will necessarily be the case in all of these group games, but you may see it down the stretch in tournament play in those knockout games if the Boomers come up against a team with a really big front court like France, right? It's an option. It's an ability for Brian Goorjian to be able to pivot and say, this isn't working, so I know this might.
Yeah. No, and I just think it speaks so much to this team. Good teams have role definition. Great teams, they've accepted, their role. They might want a bigger one, but they've at least accepted it. But like when you have role enthusiasm, and that's what this Boomers team has, every single guy knows exactly what their role is, and they are all in on that role. And when you do that, first day of every practice, the quote at Carolina was always, it's amazing what can be accomplished when nobody cares who gets the credit. And to me, teams that have role enthusiasm, teams that are all in on what is the thing I'm supposed to do to help this team, those teams embody that, and those teams can be championship teams. And I think what we saw in the second half of the France game, these guys are all in. You didn't see pouting. And when Reith came in, he knew exactly what his role was. He knew what he was supposed to do. He knew why he was playing. He knew what coverage he was supposed to bust up. And these guys all have, no matter how big or how small the role is, they all have enthusiasm of what they're trying to do. And I think that's awesome to see. And it pops on the screen. It pops on the screen that these guys are all in and they're collectively together. And I think that's really, really cool to watch.
A really good example of that is Patty Mills. Patty Mills struggled to shoot the ball against China, struggled to get going at different points throughout the last couple of years of Boomers play, and has just, set the court alight the last few games, which is the Patty of old, the Patty that Australians are really used to, that Australians revere. He's a hero for, bringing us the bronze in Tokyo, as we well know, but he was a hero well before that. And the way that he has played the last few games, he's clearly accepted a very different role. He's not just the bailout option early in the clock. He's the bailout option late in the clock now. And he's also taking less dribbles. You and I talked about it. You've got a little graphic will flash up during the course of this episode if you're watching this on YouTube. And Paddy is taking less dribbles and being more effective as a catch and shoot guy, as a catch and shoot and one dribble, two dribble guy. We haven't seen that. Paddy's been sort of handling the ball a lot and probing a lot and trying to find a way through as the only offensive player on the court. Sometimes it feels like as a Boomers fan. Yeah. And now he's got that enthusiasm of like, these other guys have got this. I can shoot. I can get open. I can score.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see his evolution from China game 1 to France. And, these games are meant for you to ramp up and to warm up and establish how we're going to play. And I think Patty's arc throughout this kind of warm-up period has been one of those where you're like, all right, this dude is now locked in. And some of it was he was shaking off rust. He didn't play a lot of basketball in the NBA season, and that matters. Like some of the stuff we were seeing, he's in the same actions, but he's just handling them much quicker. He's processing better. But to me, the coolest thing is that I use this phrase or this acronym all the time with my clients, WIMS, W-I-M-S, where is my space? And it's meant to, understand the defense is going to always give you something. And you need to take what they give you, whether it's a cut that is going to pull defenders with you and open up space for somebody else, or space where you can go into to get a shot, whether it's a shot or a cut. And to me, the difference between China game 1 and France is Patty's hitting the WIMS reads. If he sees top lock coverage, he's going backdoor. He's no longer fighting it. He's pulling defense with him. If he's going down the court, he's not just running to get the ball. He's setting up an action first, going off a screen, and then getting a DHO. There's a lot more. You guys don't have American football there, but we call it pre-snap action. Before the ball is snapped, there's movement, there's running around. And one thing that's really been cool to see is Patty is no longer just hunting the ball, holding it, and then attacking. He's getting a lot more pre-snap action where he's moving before he gets it. He's getting it while he's in an advantage spot, and then he's attacking from there, whether it's shot or one or two dribbles. And so his evolution of finding the rhythm, finding his own rhythm of getting up to speed, but then really finding the rhythm of hitting yes or no process reads of where his space is and when he's attacking has been so fun to watch in terms of the arc from China 1 to France now.
That comes with trust, right? Because ultimately Paddy's the guy. He's the alpha on this team. He's the guy that, scored 40 points in a bronze medal game and put the Superman cape on. And now he has been able to grow trust in his playmakers, trust in those guys out on the floor that are making the right play to say, this is the best way to help us win. And that's a credit to Brian Goorjian, because we've seen Paddy handle the ball so much and be the only offense on the floor. As I said, it's incredible to be able to see that Brian Goorjian has got Paddy to buy in and get to a point where he has not only enthusiasm for his role, but enthusiasm for everyone else's role as well.
Yeah. He's in.
not to say that he wouldn't be in. He's great, of course. He's been, a great Boomers player for quite some time. But it can be really difficult for particularly players on the downturn of their career to accept the fact that someone else is going to have the ball in their hands. I'm going to have to do something completely different to what I'm used to, particularly as part of this team. I'm used to having the ball in my hands all the time. Now I'm only going to get it when I really, really can get it and when I can do something really good with it.
Yeah. And he's also, you can see him thinking through and evolving. In the 4 warm-up games after they left Australia, he's, you said he's on the downturn. I think that he's definitely still got pop. Like he's awesome.
Age,
yeah.
Profile perspective, the skills are still there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's incredible. You have to take your hat off to the man. Whenever that green and gold goes on his chest, he is a different guy. He is 10 foot tall. I mean, he's so confident out there, and he's oozing that confidence. The challenge, I think, has been to transfer that confidence on to his teammates, a new set of teammates where he adopts a different role, they adopt new roles, and potentially he gets the ball out of his hands. And that's a credit to him. It's a credit to the coaching staff, the whole Boomers team for buying in.
100%. I think one thing I've noticed is that I started charting in the 4 games overseas, and he's a little bit older. And as you get older, you become way more effective, A, from the advantage, but B, when you can take less dribbles into the shot, when you can transfer power into your action. And one thing that's kind of left him a little bit is finishing at the rim. And he's been 0 for 3 on any finishes at the rim that are non-transition with 2 turnovers. Going downhill and getting into the rim has been something that you've seen the age catch up a little bit. And he's counteracted that by not forcing actions all the way to the rim, but maybe veering off and shooting a 12-foot pull-up or a 15-foot pull-up. And he's done a phenomenal job of understanding where he's at in his basketball mortality, what is still functioning. Because a lot of times when you get to that place, your mind is going, 2 steps ahead, but your body doesn't catch up. And he's found the calibration from China till now. He's found the calibration of where his body is actually at, what it can and can't do, and where he's most effective. And yes, credit to Gorge, credit to the teammates, and credit to Patty. They all have kind of dialed it in and really calibrated what works best for us and what's our best chance to podium.
Sidebar from that, you and I have spoken about multiple actions for older players. I want to dig into that a little bit and understand what that really means. What's the difference between a 25-year-old guy doing multiple things before they have to score and a 35-year-old guy doing multiple things before they have to score? How does that manifest itself? Obviously, we can leave LeBron James out of this conversation. But, for other players, for the vast majority of the basketball community, professional basketball community, how does that age catch up with them? How does that basketball mortality catch up with them? And how do they then evolve out of that? And how's Patty a really good example?
Yeah, I think it kind of exists for everybody because it's energy. It's really like it's shooting the basketball or passing it or finishing. It's all about transferring energy. And the more dribbles that you take, the more energy it depletes from you. And it's hard. I think one thing that always gets lost, it's really hard to handle the ball. And it's hard because you're absorbing pressure not only from whoever's guarding you, but you're also trying to read what's going on. You have some form of like a conceptual offense that you're trying to get into. And if that's not enough, all eyes are also on you from all the other defenders. So you have all of this attention, it's depleting all of this energy. And then at some point when you get to that linchpin moment, whether you're shooting or passing, like there's not always as much pop. And sometimes when I saw the first couple of games with Patty, like that was really the case. And he's done so much better of a job of, even if he's had a lot of dribbles in a possession, he'll get off it and then get right back on it. So there's a few that we've seen where he'll have a few possessions where he's got a lot of dribbles going and there's defensive pressure going, and then he'll get off of it and right into a get action where he throws it to a big flashing and then runs off the big to get it back. And just that little reset allows you to take a breath and just kind of like recharge just that one split second, get back in rhythm and on balance. And then you have a little bit more optionality when you pick it back up of where your weight's going and how you can kind of drive it into a shot or drive it downhill. You can see help coming a little bit earlier. And to me, there's just a lot of things that he's been doing that have been great with that. And then also some of the other guards, the team in general, when they get stuck, there was a lot of times in the previous World Cup when they would get stuck and the offense would just get stuck in the mud. And now, you'll see the bigs flashing up from the dunker to get a catch and go into an action on the other side, get a catch and go right into a get action with the same ball handler. And that stuff has really, really allowed a little bit more fluidity in the offense and a little bit more power.
There's a confidence and sophistication to that. Speaking of confidence and sophistication, the Podium Pod is brought to you by Team Feet. Team Feet offers premium athletic socks for modern teams, however they compete, with sweat wicking cotton, arch support, ventilation panels, and compression stitching. Team Feet socks are built to outperform. Whether your team is tiny or 1,000 strong, Team Feet unites and excites your players and supporters with their combination of quality and performance. Join basketball teams around Australia and the world by choosing Team Feet. For designs and worldwide delivery, head to teamfeet.com. Mark, we spoke about playmaking earlier. You spoke about the amount of playmaking that is around Patty Mills that's allowing him to play this way. One of the things that struck you across this whole build-up is the sheer volume of playmaking on the floor for Australia at any one time. What does that allow Australia to do? How is that a point of difference for this Boomers team?
Yeah, I think we talked about it earlier. They have 5 wings that are really playing the majority of minutes, and 4 of them have spent big chunks of their career playing point guard. And You've got Daniels, Giddey, Exum, and Mills. And
that's not a normal team makeup, right? That's not normal.
No, and a lot of these guys like Exum and Daniels and Mills, and even Giddey some, but not really. They've all kind of been able to evolve out of that in order to find minutes on the court at higher levels. But those skills don't leave. And once you play point guard, it's really, you see the game in a different way because you're no longer just responsible for you and you're no longer reading the action from a point of gravity that is away from the ball. You now see the game from this lens of you're responsible for everybody else. You have to understand where they're supposed to be, where their actions are. And a lot of those guys have taken those skills, and I see it the most in their cutting. They're cutting from those positions as soon as the shell is cracked and there's a little bit of help coming from their man
what does that mean? What does that mean?
The defensive shell. Okay, so defensive shell, you want to think about your defense is on a string. We're connected. Everybody's connected on a string and our shell is intact. So this is a shell, right?
Yep.
And as soon as it gets a little cracked like this, where you have to have somebody pull from here to go help and do this, the shell is not cracked anymore. And now you get a little hip turn, you get somebody going for early help, and now all of a sudden it's a jailbreak situation. And in those moments, how early you move into where is my space? How early you see that, how early you move, how early you see passing lanes and passing angles, that matters. And whether it's cutting for a finish, whether it's cutting to a space for a pass where you can shoot or move it again and keep the shell moving, as soon as that happens, those guys, they have instincts that are different. If you play point guard, you see it a little bit earlier. You see it a split second earlier because you're the one that's actually wanting the person to make that cut when you're cracking the shell. And to me, that's been something that's been really awesome to see.
Who's been the best cutter or the cutter that surprised you out of that guard troop?
Dyson Daniels has been by far and away the most fun watch from the guard group for me. I mean, he is an absolute demon on the ball. There's nobody I'd rather not be guarded by than him. It's hell. It looks like it's hell when he guards you. It's unbelievable. And it's on ball and then off ball. He's got great instincts. And cutting wise, as soon as he had one against USA or Serbia, I forget, where the ball was on the left wing and it just gets a sliver pass and his man is low man help and he starts coming over with early help. And before his man even takes the first step for help, he's taking his first step from the corner to cut baseline for a dunk. And that level of instinct, that level of early cut, when you know the help has to happen, that stuff has been awesome to see from him. He's been my favorite.
It's split second stuff, right? Which you know make people guess which way do I go. So ultimately, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make people not have a full commitment either way, and then exploit whichever they choose.
Yeah, you can't think when you're out there. Your habits turn into instincts, and you have to feel the game. And his habits that are turning into instincts on the offensive end in terms of cutting have been really, really cool.
So let's flip side that. The amount of playmaking on the floor is great. The number of turnovers that those playmakers are making, not great at the moment. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. Josh Giddey seemingly averaging about 7 turnovers a game in these warm-up games. And whilst I understand he needs a ball in his hands, 7 turnovers a game is from one player is not really a sustainable way to win, right?
It hasn't been good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's to put it lightly. We were looking at it the other day, and just in general, for the 4 games after they've played Olympic competition now for 4 games, they have a negative assist to turnover ratio. And if you take out Puerto Rico, who most likely doesn't have a chance to medal, like no disrespect to Puerto Rico, they've played 3 teams that have had a chance to medal, and they're 21 assists to 48 turnovers. That's god awful. I mean, that's rancid. That's truly, truly bad. And I think you don't want to, with this level of playmaking and they're playing fast, you don't want to, not empower guys. You don't want to put, handcuffs on them. You want them to be playing free. You want them to be, because they're finding good, easy buckets, and easy buckets are very hard to come by in FIBA play. So they have a plan to play faster, but you want to have a little bit more, control in that. You want to be, there are some Giddey ones that maybe you could live without. There's some that, maybe they should be shots and not anything. There's some that maybe he could eat it and find something a little bit better, but you can't go 21 and 48. You can't do that. That's 2.2 turnovers for every 1 assist. That will catch up with you eventually.
So that's something else that we're going to look at over the group games. What is that assist to turnover ratio? Are they taking care of the ball? Are they able to rein that in? And that has to be a focus for Brian Goorjian through these, initial practices prior to this group stage, right? He's been a coach for decades. He has to look at those turnover numbers and say, we are creating simply too many opportunities for our opponents to outscore us.
Yeah, and they're not all created equally. I think there will be some that he's fine with, like the out of bounds ones. And then there will be some where there was the one Giddey hit ahead to Josh Green where he threw it to Patty and then Patty throws it away and it's a live ball 3-on-1 coming the other way. Those are the ones that kill you. Those are the ones where you're just like, oh man, well, what are we doing here? This is low risk, high reward, things like that. Or high risk, low reward. Sorry. Those are the ones. Those are the ones that kill you. You don't want those. I think they're going to be able to determine, in these practices, what are the risks that we're willing to take in these passes and which ones are the ones that we want to try to rein back in. We want to be a little bit more selective in our hit aheads and get something a little bit better.
Let's now transition to your favorite member of this Australian Boomers squad. I had to talk you down from doing an entire episode about this guy. We could do another half an hour on him, but you have not had the privilege of watching Nick Kay in action prior to this exercise where you've been, becoming an expert in the Boomers over the last few weeks. And it is not to put too fine a point on it. You have fallen in basketball love with this man. You are the biggest Nick Kay advocate I know. And I'm just going to let you talk about Nick Kay now because
sign me up. How much Nick Kay stock can I buy? How much?
Look,
I want it all.
All of it. All of it.
I want it all. Absolutely all of it. Give it all to me. I want all the Nick Kay stock. Bring it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. So why have you fallen in basketball love with this man? Because he has been a mainstay, a fixture, a bronze medalist. He's one of the first players picked for, every single Boomers team. And I think, a lot of casual basketball fans probably look at the box score and go, why does that guy keep getting picked? Why does he keep getting on this team? But when you watch these games outside of Okinawa, where I don't think he had the best tournament of his career, but outside of that, he just impacts winning And I think
Oh,
that's
he's
the
awesome.
overwhelming thing you and I have spoken about over the last few weeks.
For me, he's the first name on the team sheet. And when I watch him on film, he pops as this. He's the guy that everybody on that team wants to play with, and the guy that everybody they're playing against hates to play against.
Yep.
It's unbelievable the things he does that keeps them on schedule as an offense, on schedule as a defense. He plugs every single hole. His communication is outer worldly. He's talking everybody through where they need to be, quarterbacking the defense from the back. He does a phenomenal job of making sure that he's reading the play 2-3 steps ahead. There's a line about Jokic that Peja Stojakovic used in a piece this year, and it's "you're only as fast as you can anticipate." And so it doesn't matter that he's not the most athletic person on the floor. He's reading the play 2-3 steps ahead. He understands where the danger is. He understands what he's supposed to meet that danger with. Is he supposed to meet it with aggression, or is he supposed to play a cat and mouse game of stunting and guarding too? And I tell you what, he never makes a mistake. For me, he is one of the best team defenders and individual defenders that I've seen on tape this whole year. NBA, overseas, FIBA, it doesn't matter. Give me all the Nick K stock. I'm buying.
That is the highest level of praise. And I want to ask you about, in particular, what Nick K does. You spoke about how he's quarterbacking the defense. You spoke about how he's directing traffic. But what are some examples of the way that he plays that make him so invaluable to whatever the team unit is that are surrounding him? And in particular, how does he work with so much playmaking on the floor, and how does that allow him to be in better situations?
Yeah. So offensively, he does a wonderful job of he can do really anything. He can shoot the ball. He led the B League in Japan in 3-point percentage.
Yep.
One of my old teammates, my roommate from college, played in the B League this year. And I asked him, I was like, what's it like to play against Nick K? And the first thing he said, he was like, oh, man. He was like, that dude just keeps coming. He was like,
Yep.
you're never turning around, and he's never not there. He's always there, always there. And if you make a mistake offensively, he can handle the ball and get you into an action. He can shoot the ball. He can drive the ball. He understands early help equals early pass. Late help equals finish. He reads coverages offensively early, just like defensively, and gets cuts into space and keeps the shell cracked. He does such a phenomenal job of, call it process over results. If you do everything right, every single play, in the end, the process of that will win out over results. And make or miss, Nick K never gets deterred. He continues to do everything right. He knows every single play, no matter what it is. If he's 0 for 5 versus Serbia from 3, next shot in the fourth quarter, wide open shot, in rhythm, on balance, he shoots it. Make or miss, that shot's going up no matter what. And I think, to me, when I watch somebody and you see them be so committed in their core to, I'm going to play the right way every single possession, results be damned. There's something really empowering about that. And also, as a teammate, you know exactly what you're going to get. There's not a selfish bone in his body. And you know that this guy, no matter if it's the biggest thing or the smallest thing, he's going to be there and he's going to give everything he's got. And there's a certain level of trust that comes with that you can't shake. Is the more you do it, the more you do it.
Now, it wouldn't be the pick and roll if we didn't talk about the pick and roll. And, you and I have talked about Nick K and his pick and roll intelligence, I guess, is probably the way that I would term it. How does what he does out there in those sorts of actions help his team?
Yeah. So defensively, the Boomers have gone with, as their base coverage, they're going to be very aggressive at the level of the screen. So they're bringing 2 to the level, and they're hedging, they're blitzing, they're doing things that are putting pressure, and their goal is to hit first defensively. They're trying to hit first. They don't want to be, sitting back, trying to read things. They're going to be the aggressor. They're going to hit first. They're going to set the rules of engagement. And in order to do that at the level, you have to have a few things. You got to be aggressive, on the ball. You got to be aggressive with the guy coming up. and you're going to give the opportunity to have 4 versus 3 actions on the backside. And the
Yep.
most important thing for this is whoever's low man help, whoever's the first help, farthest man away from the pick and roll, that guy has to be reading the action early, because if he's not meeting that short roll guy early, if he's not on top of them, if he's not 2 steps ahead and aware, everything falls apart and the shell's cracked and you're playing from behind every single possession. And Nick K plugs every single hole when he's not involved in the pick and roll. And when he is involved, he's great in that too. He's active hands, deflections, steals. But when he's on the backside, he is on it early. He is plugging every single hole and he's talking everybody through it because he's seeing the complete picture from the backside. And to me, he's the biggest reason why they can play this coverage, why they can be aggressive, why they can be the ones to hit first. It's his level of anticipation and his level of communication and aggressiveness as a defensive quarterback. It's off the charts.
Because our initial conversations about this coverage, you were not sold because you hadn't watched a lot of it. And immediately your reaction was, I'm not sure if this is going to work. But the more you watch Nick K, the more you were kind of sold on, well, this is why they can get away with it.
Yeah, I completely. I think it's a coverage that, traditionally you don't want to give, a chance for your shell to just be cracked very easily. And the U.S. really started to bring the screens up higher, try to get the ball in the pocket earlier, try to get to the 4v3 actions. And sometimes they got good looks, but a lot of times I saw Nick K. One time they bring the screen up to 30 feet away and they're trying to put Anthony Davis in the short roll. And one time he comes up and meets him almost at the 3-point line from the dunker spot. And he's reading it early. He understands what they need. And then earlier in the game, same exact play, same exact setup, but the screen was lower, and meeting Anthony Davis would have led to a really easy lob to Adebayo in the dunker, who he was guarding. And so instead of coming up and meet him, he comes up and he plays a little cat and mouse game, and he puts a little moment of hesitation. And to me, his intelligence, it really makes this coverage hum, and it really allows the Australians to take the fight to whoever they're playing on both ends of the floor. And I think that's kind of the mentality and the identity we're starting to see. They want to be the ones to hit first. And his level of intelligence and communication, he's the safety blanket that allows them to play that and not be shredded.
I want to end with this because we've covered a lot of ground on this episode, and we've covered a lot of ground over the last few weeks in talking about this basically at every waking moment that I'm not at work. I'm talking to Mark about basketball. What is the recipe for beating this Boomers team? How do you defeat this team? We've covered a lot of stuff around its turnovers. You're losing the assist to turnover battle if you're the Boomers. We've covered a lot of the fact of if people start to doubt the fact that they can shoot the ball as soon as they have a wide open look. And we've covered the role enthusiasm stuff. Is it as simple as me saying that everything we've talked about here today, if any of that falls over, then the house of cards is in danger of falling over?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it's that, you have to do X, Y, and Z to beat this team. I think they've really established that we're going to be the ones that determine whether we win or not. And we're okay with that. We're not going to sit back. We're not going to be like, oh man, I hope they don't make shots. We're going to be the ones that determine what shots are going to be there. We're going to be the ones that decide, we're not going to let you just pick us apart. We're going to hit. And I think if we see this team lose, it will be any of these factors that we've seen them grow in. When the lights come on and the pressure hits, do they regress and do they start to worry more about the results than the process? Because right now, this team, they don't care about the stats. They know exactly what their roles are. They know how they're trying to win each game. They're not going the same way as they're zagging. They're doing their thing. They're committed to their habits. So if we see them keep leaning into their process, make or miss, doesn't matter on offense or defense, we're going to do everything right. We know we're going to play our way. We're going to play Boomers basketball right now. Then we see them succeed or we see them fail, but they're going to do it their way. I think if we see them let off that gas and start worrying about, oh, I've missed a few, and somebody goes under on a Giddey screen. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to shoot it. I'm just going to hold it and back it out.
Yep.
Or we see them not aggressive at the level of the ball and be like, man, I hope that person's behind me. Or we see them not being early with help on the pick and roll stuff. Like we see them not playing boomers ball. That's dangerous. That's trouble. We see them lean into what they're about. Like it's exciting times.
Very, and you will be with us across the group stage and hopefully for a lot longer than that. Marc Campbell, thank you very much for joining me today on the Podium Pod. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a blast.